Live from New York, it's Sunday Funday. The group stage is done. Today, the knockout stage begins in the World Cup 2026. This is First Touch 26. Today, I have the pleasure and the honor to be alongside Eric Krakauer. I'm Michele Giannone. How are you, Eric? Good morning.
I'm great. Well, I'm not so great. Disappointed.
Whoa.
Can I say disappointed about Portugal's performance against Colombia, even though it was expected? But we're on to the knockouts, and I'm excited about that.
It's a great day to be in New York, specifically today, Sunday, June 28th, is the annual New York City Pride March, Pride Parade.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a party.
It is going to be a party. I wasn't even aware of that. I've been in soccer zone for the last, few weeks, and then I saw the roads being closed. I asked, and I was like, oh, wow, it's going to get crazy today.
Canada plays today, do or die. I don't see David Gass here. He's always talking Canada, blah, blah, blah. He's more Canadian than American. Where are you, David? You didn't want the South African smoke?
He's watching, that's for sure. He's watching.
Okay, so we start every day with our one big thing each that we've seen, or that we saw yesterday, or that we've seen during the tournament. Again, the knockout stage starts today, 3 p.m. Eastern Time in Los Angeles, Canada, one of the host nations against South Africa. Probably one of the surprises here in the round of 32. But before talking, and we're going to talk about that game, obviously, give me your big thing for today, Sunday, June 28th.
Well, you mentioned South Africa, and I think that the big story coming out of the group stage is how well CAF teams did. 9 out of 10 of the teams that made it to the World Cup have made it to the knockout stages. And I don't think a lot of people would have anticipated that. If you look at a team like Tunisia getting knocked out, the only team, expectations were that that is exactly what was going to happen. But the same was said about South Africa. So for South Africa to get out of their group with Mexico is very, very impressive. And then you have other teams like Ghana, who I think punched above their weight, and others like the Ivory Coast, who perhaps could be a real problem for whoever they face. And the first team to face the Ivory Coast is Norway. So that's a much anticipated match, and one that I'm going to keep a close eye on. 9
out of the 10th African teams advance. The only one was Tunisia, correct?
Tunisia, yeah. It's unbelievable.
What do you think Bastian Schweinsteiger will say now?
Let's hope he doesn't say much. Let's hope he doesn't say much, because the attitude that he showed, the statements that he made, are the kind of thing that we heard for a very long time about African football. Yeah. And it was pervasive. Yeah. You know, it was a common refrain among people who even knew the game well and talked about the game for a living, who played the game. For the most part, that attitude is dissipated, but every once in a while, you hear these anachronistic comments. I think he will be sorry that he made them, given the criticism that he got. But that's exactly what African football has been fighting against for so very long. And just think of the amount of African teams that had qualified in the past for World Cups. We didn't see many of them. Now you get 10, and 9 of them make it through. It's impressive.
Absolutely agree with you. My big thing, it's Colombia. I'm fascinated by what they did yesterday. They tied 0-0 with Portugal. They win the group. They advance as first. And what I like the most is that they absolutely took the game to Portugal.
Yep.
On a stadium that you could say was 80%, 90%.
They were in Barranquilla.
Colombian, in Miami. Yeah. It was the Miami party, Barranquilla, Bogota party yesterday in South Florida. Especially in the second half, and especially after the subs, Colombia, with knowing that with a tie, they would have won the group, they went for it.
Yeah.
They made Portugal look flat. So my big thing is for Colombia, that if we take what we saw yesterday, I think we both agree that this is a team that can make a deep, deep run on this tournament.
Yeah, I know that we're going to touch on this game a little bit later. But what I'll say is, yesterday, I referred to this game as a huge test for Portugal and their title contention credentials. And what I saw, you used the word flat, and I think it's the appropriate word, was a very flat team, lacking dynamism, but also lacking initiative. Whereas the Colombians were the complete opposite. They wanted to take the game to Portugal. They wanted to prove to themselves that they are a contender and that they can beat whoever is in their path. And I believe that. I still think that there are some weaknesses there. I'm not sure what they're going to do with the center forward position, although Cordoba handled himself very well. Luis Suarez pops off the bench and plays better, in my opinion, than he has in the tournament so far. But this is a team that has multiple strengths. I thought they were going to play mostly in transition. They had most of the ball and took the game to Portugal for 90 minutes. And it was for a Portuguese fan, it wasn't something I enjoyed watching, but if I put my neutral hat on, it was an incredible performance and just an enormous party there in Miami.
We're going to talk, like you said, more in depth about that game. We've got to start, and it's the moment to begin to look at yesterday's action. And we're going to start with the 10 p.m. Eastern Time games with Group J, Argentina, Jordan, Algeria, and Austria. 3 teams from this group advance. We're seeing it with do you see our graphics? What our team has done for this World Cup? Just the best graphics in the game. Argentina with 9 points, perfect. Austria and Algeria tying 3-3. What a match.
Yep. Everybody expected a dud. It was not a dud.
Yeah, but everybody expected a tie.
Yes.
And you guess what happened? A tie. That benefited both. And Iran was very interested and glued to the TV watching this game. The only thing that made it that Iran didn't advance was a tie on this game. And sadly for Iran, both Austria and Algeria advanced with the 3-3 tie.
And it certainly didn't look like it was going to be that way. You know, a lot of Algerian fans were really upset when Riyad Mahrez scored the goal to go up 3-2 because Algeria winning that game would face Spain in the round of 32, and nobody wanted that to happen. Well, nobody who was Algerian wanted that to happen.
Yep.
But I think that Algeria at that point, despite the fact that in that specific period of time during the game, they had more of the ball, they were afraid to lose. And so the gamble was, we should play to win here in case we concede a goal late. It is better to face Spain in the knockout stages than it is to pack your bags and go home. So Mahrez, who was one of the players of the match, scores 2 goals. People were saying in the lead up to the tournament that he was too old to start for this team. I think he's proved them wrong and has proven that he is a crucial piece to this team coming off the right-hand side. Not the same player as he was before, of course. Riyad Mahrez has a big game, puts Algeria on the front foot, but then there is relief when Austria score. And I do think that both teams coming into this game understood that a draw was enough, but they wanted to win. They wanted to win. I really believe that both these teams wanted to win.
We talk about this, and obviously I don't think it's a surprise for anyone that this game finished on a tie.
Yeah.
Like you said, I was very surprised about the approach of both teams wanting to win or trying to do something.
Especially Austria for most of the game.
I was expecting a dot, 0-0. We both know, both teams, all the players, both coaches know what's happened. If we tie 0-0, it benefits both. We all want to advance, obviously. And talking about that, Algeria advances to the knockout stage of the World Cup for the second time in history. They did it in 2014. And Austria is the first time since 1982. Like you said, now Austria faces Spain.
So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you think that all the talk of the disgrace in Gijón in 82 bled into the minds of the players going into this game?
That's a good question. I don't know. Honestly, I don't want to take that liberty.
Yeah, don't want to speculate.
I don't want to speculate on that, but I will. What I can not guarantee, but I'm pretty certain of, is that both teams before the game came into the match knowing and with a wink, hey, tie, help us both. Let's just deal with that.
Yeah, but if any one of these two teams went into that game thinking that they would take their foot off the pedal, they were disabused of that idea within the first few minutes, especially the way the Austrians approached the beginning of that game. taking it to Algeria. So if I were to speculate, which I'm going to do, I would think that a conversation was had in both locker rooms. And I can just imagine...
From who? From FIFA?
No. Within the coaching staff, the players, look, there's a lot of eyes are going to be on this match. This match is going to be under a lot of scrutiny based on what happened in the past and given what we know could potentially happen. Iran is also looking at this match, and they're making sure that... you said that the Iranians were watching this game closely. I'm sure a lot of them are thinking, not explicitly that the fix is in, but they're looking for any clue that could in some way reveal to them that something was said between these two teams before the match. So I think both teams go into this game very aware of that reality. We're
going to see in depth in a few minutes how the bracket is set now, but we can talk. Algeria now faces July 2nd. Switzerland, not a bad matchup for Algeria at all. And like we said, Austria now faces probably, where do you put Spain? Behind France, like the favorite this tournament? I'm
going to say Argentina before Spain.
France, Argentina, Spain?
Yeah, I would say so.
And talking about Argentina, they little bit of turnover. They left some key starters, including a guy named Leo Messi on the bench. They get the win 3-1 against Jordan. Leo Messi comes on the field in the 60th minute, and of course, what does he do? He scores
a
free kick, and it's the 7th game in a row in a World Cup that Leo Messi has scored. With him, it feels like every time he does something, there's like, okay, now he broke this record. Now he tied this record. Now he did something absurd. And I've never gotten into, and I want to hear your opinion as a Portuguese man. And I don't like I've never been in the middle of like the war of Cristiano Messi.
Yeah.
I enjoy soccer. I enjoy football. I enjoy both. We're talking about two of the best players that have ever touched a soccer ball in the history of the sport. I've always been more of a Messi guy, and not because I like someone better, it's because I hate or dislike somebody. Just like I've always connected more with the way Messi played.
Stylistically.
Right? And I think after the 2022 World Cup, I think Messi, maybe the discussion was over about who should be the best ever, or between the two, who should be on top.
Yep.
But after what we've seen in this tournament, I don't think there's a doubt that. And we got to put into account Cristiano Ronaldo is 3 years older than Messi. Mm-hmm. So we don't know what if Messi at 40 years or 41 years old.
Is delivering in the same way.
Exactly. So
yeah, but the point is, and I said this before, much to the chagrin of Portuguese fans, that while Messi has continued to play at an incredible level, an elevated level, we began to see Cristiano Ronaldo's regression in 2022. Now, that didn't mean that despite that regression, he was still a fantastic player, a tremendous goal scorer. In fact, the one thing that people say when they compare both these players, that out of the two, Cristiano Ronaldo is the better goal scorer than Messi. I think that's up for debate as well. Everything about these two guys is up for debate. But like you, I've really disliked the conversation, the narrative that's been had about both these players, particularly the part where they've vilified Cristiano Ronaldo. And there's been a constant vilification. I remember very well, and I wrote an article in 2012, that while he was playing so well in that European Championship, carrying a pretty basic Portuguese national team through to the knockout rounds in a very difficult group with the Netherlands and with Germany, Messi was playing in friendlies, and he scored an incredible goal here in the United States against Brazil. And the immediate reaction to that was, look at what Messi can do. Look at the goal that he scored. Cristiano, you can't compare. And yet Cristiano was dominating this European Championship. So there's always been this dichotomy where everything that Messi did elevated him while it brought Cristiano down, no matter what Cristiano would do. So that narrative I've always hated. But I'm with you. I've been more of a Messi guy, even though when both those players were playing for Real Madrid and Barcelona, I liked the kind of football that Real Madrid was playing compared to Barcelona's, which sometimes put me a little bit to sleep, even though it was penetrative and aesthetically beautiful. But because I like more explosive football. That's why I like Klopp's Liverpool as well. That was the only reason. But as a Portuguese, I can tell you that out of the two, Messi's the superior player. It's that simple. Forget about the World Cup, just in terms of quality.
Enjoy them both. We don't know how
Enjoy
much
them both.
they have left. Argentina now plays Cape Verde, one of the big surprises of this tournament on the round of 32. Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time in Miami. That's going to be a big, massive Argentinian crowd.
Yeah, look, if you look at the bracket, Argentina, man, they have a very easy path
compared to the big teams left, for sure.
Compared to everyone.
Yeah.
I mean, the only team that I look at in that bracket that could give them, look, anything can happen. We've seen in this World Cup that anything can happen. But the only team that I can see in that side of the bracket who can give them a real fight and perhaps beat them is Colombia. And that would be in the latter stages, the quarterfinal. That was the quarterfinal that everybody anticipated between Argentina and Portugal in Kansas City.
It will be a rematch of the Copa America 2014 final, where Colombia took them all the way to PKs.
Yes.
Argentina. Colombia, that, in my opinion, was the best team of Copa America 2024. And I think yesterday we saw something similar to what that level that we
I would
saw.
argue even better. I think we've seen something better.
And you know what I think? And again, we're going to talk about Colombia next. Why don't we do that? Let's move on to Group K, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time matches. If you need to sell, you know, the people that don't like soccer, and they say, soccer, they don't score goals, how do they end up on a tie, 0-0? That's one of the most entertaining, the most best 0-0s that you're going to ever see between Colombia and Portugal. And what we just mentioned about Colombia, what I like the most out of this team is, one, they have a lot of depth. We're going to talk about the subs. I think Colombia looked even better when the subs came in, and that they're not James dependent like in the past.
Yeah, and the influence that Quintero had when he came on, which wasn't the same in the previous game. I thought Quintero was mismeasured in his passing in the second group game. The cross he delivers is terrific, and we're going to talk about that offside call in a little bit. Look, everything I saw from this game is what I had anticipated except for one point. I thought that Portugal would have more of the ball. And what I just told you about Real Madrid versus Barcelona and the kind of football that I enjoyed and Klopp's Liverpool is what I saw from Colombia. It was an explosive performance. So I enjoyed the football that they were playing, even as a Portuguese, while being quite cynical about Portugal's approach, particularly in the second half. You saw the structural changes that were made because Cancelo had his hands full in the first half with Lucho Diaz. And for the most part, I think he did quite well. He had Ruben Neves as well pinching in to try and double-team Lucho. But he was never able to go forward. So what does Roberto Martinez do? He switches to a build-up with three at the back, bringing in Dalot to help out, to try and get a little bit more width from Pedro Neto, who spent most of the time defending. Portugal, for me, coming into this game, not in the first half, but in the second half, looked like a team that was afraid to lose. I think they were overwhelmed by the environment. They were overwhelmed by the weather, 100%. And they were overwhelmed by the initiative and the explosiveness that was demonstrated by Colombia. And as a Portuguese fan, that exasperated me. But what also comes out of this game is the narrative after the match against DR Congo, whether Cristiano Ronaldo should be in the starting 11 or not. Because when Portugal were trying to play in transition, Pedro Neto would take off. Where was Cristiano Ronaldo? He wasn't even on the shot, right? He just couldn't keep up. So I think that Portugal has to tinker with a lot of the problems, and I'm not sure I trust Roberto Martinez to do that. Whereas I look at Colombia, and I think that any team that they face will fear the kind of performance that they saw in Miami yesterday.
I want to stay with Portugal for a second because you've been an expert, a fan, and a Portuguese man. I have some questions for you, especially what you're talking about coaching decisions.
Yep.
And we saw also what you were talking about with Pedro Neto on the right side when Rafael Leao came in on the left side. That's when Portugal, that's the best Portugal looked. But it was mostly Rafael Leao taking one-on-one to Arias, who has played all the game. He was probably tired. I'm not saying that another player would have contained Rafael Leao.
No, but I think Arias actually did very well.
He's the only one alongside with Pedro Neto that tried to do something different.
Yes.
So, talking about Portugal and the big elephant in the room, right? Which is Cristiano Ronaldo. After Uzbekistan, yep. I'm back. Okay. And everybody's back against Uzbekistan.
And that's what ruffles a lot of feathers, the fact that he says things like that.
I'm back instead of like we are back. That's those are the things that when you try to defend Cristiano, it's difficult on this moment. Gonzalo Ramos doesn't see the field yesterday.
10 minutes he's played in this tournament.
He's the de facto sub as a number 9, so de facto sub if Cristiano will ever leave the field. Bernardo Silva, after being started on the first game, that day he gets announced as a new Real Madrid player. Now he's coming from the bench on the second game.
Doesn't even show up in this one.
Doesn't show up today. If you're Martinez, or maybe you don't want to be Martinez, I don't think any.
I would like to have some influence over Martinez.
Let's say you take over Portugal right now for your round of 32 games. What would you do?
I would put Cristiano Ronaldo on the bench, and I would play Gonçalo Ramos. And one of the things, let me explain that point, because a lot of people will say, well, he's the best scorer. Gonçalo Ramos doesn't score in the same way, doesn't have the same ability inside the 18 as Gonçalo Ramos does. And that is true. But what I said yesterday on this show was, in order to get the best out of Cristiano Ronaldo, you're going to have to push up your line of confrontation. You're going to have to push up your defensive line to shorten the spaces which Cristiano can attack. But what happened yesterday was that Portugal dropped too far back at times, and when they tried to press, they were disjointed. Let's talk about why they dropped back. Because Colombia overwhelmed them. So what do they want to do? They want to stave off the attacks. They want to plug up all the holes in front of Diogo Costa, which they did. A lot of the shots that came from Colombia came from outside of the box, a few inside as well. Diogo Costa, who stood on his head in that game, the save that he makes to prevent Cordoba from scoring on the right-hand side, where he slaps away, was unbelievable. But the point is, if you're sitting back, you need somebody who can run into spaces, run down the corridors, run down the half spaces. Cristiano is not going to give you that. And when you are pressing, you need a little bit more movement from your center forward in order to open spaces for midfielders to make penetrative runs. Ronaldo didn't offer any of that. So I'm not necessarily putting this all down to Cristiano Ronaldo. What I'm saying is that Portugal have more weapons at their disposal, more ways to threaten their opponent if he's not playing an entire game.
Can you give me, top of your head, what will be your starting lineup, midfield up?
I would go with Neves, João. Why did he start on the bench in this game? There was nothing physically wrong with him, and Ruben Neves couldn't hack it. So I'd start with João Neves, Vitinha, Bruno. On the left-hand side, for this next game, Rafael Leão, despite the fact that I feel like he lacks a little bit of heart and consistency, I think he proved himself a little bit yesterday, as you noted. And then on the right side, give Trincão an opportunity. Because Trincão can both stretch the field, but he can also come inside. He's a very technical player, can link up play well. So that's what I would do. Oh, and Gonçalo Ramos up top. The only problem with that is you drop João Félix. And João Félix, I think, has stood out as one of the best Portuguese players, especially in terms of his inventiveness. The play where he chests the ball from the throw-in and just hits it high. So maybe I don't play Gonçalo Ramos and I play João Félix as a false 9.
Now, having said that, do you think it's going to happen?
No.
Do you think they will bench Cristiano?
No. And so my point was that is, listen, he's not going to drop Cristiano. So you need to make sure that you devise a game plan that is going to get the best out of Cristiano. He did it against Uzbekistan, but that's Uzbekistan. You need to do it against the big boys.
And by not winning yesterday and not winning the group, now Portugal is heading to Toronto on Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern time against Croatia.
Yeah, I'm not so worried about that matchup. I haven't seen anything in this tournament from Croatia that scares me. And they will say the same thing about Portugal, by the way. Although I was messaging back and forth with Christian Kalina, the goalkeeper for Charlotte FC, who's a friend of mine. And what he wrote...
Goalkeeper of the year in
2024. And what he wrote to me was, there's always a fear factor when you're talking about Cristiano Ronaldo. He can show up, he can do something out of nowhere. That's the only thing. Other than that, I think he's very confident that Croatia can beat Portugal.
Colombia wins the group, and they're heading to Kansas City. That is going to become Barranquilla for a day, Bogota for a day. Friday, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time against Ghana. The other game in this group, DR Congo. One of the big surprises of this World Cup. They finished third in the group. They beat Uzbekistan 3-1. And now they head to Atlanta to play England on July 1st. That's Wednesday. Congo, obviously, you were talking about the African teams at the top of the show. One of the big surprises of this World Cup. With a statement win, coming from behind, again, Uzbekistan. First of all, what do we make about Congo? And second, obviously, this next game against England, I don't think anyone will give them a shot, but I don't think anyone should be worried about that. This game should be, no matter what happens, a celebration for the people of Congo.
100%. You know, when you say that you're surprised about DR Congo, I'm not so sure that I'm that surprised. They had a tough qualification process. Mm-hmm. They knocked off some big boys, Cameroon among them. Mm-hmm. This is a team that has a lot of quality in the attacking third. You got Bakambu, who has been a big game player in Europe for a while. You got Wissa, who was a standout player for London team. I can't think, before he moved to Newcastle. I'm blanking on the team. But a goal scorer, scores a great header against Portugal. First goal for DR Congo in the World Cup. Took the game to Uzbekistan as you would expect because they understood what was on the line. And they showed that they're not just a defensive team, even though that is one of their strengths. So against England, was there anything that you thought was super impressive about the English against Panama? I know that they took over in the second half, but in the first half, Panama made it very difficult for them.
I haven't seen anything impressive by England except 30 minutes in the second half against Croatia. Not even 20, 25 minutes.
Yeah, but that was, for me, that was more about Croatia not being particularly good.
I agree.
So
yesterday, we're going to talk about England next.
Yeah.
I think England is one of the most disappointing teams in the sense of what, at least I'm talking about myself, what I was expecting from them before the World Cup and what I'm going to expect from them moving forward. And one thing that you're mentioning against Congo, it's something that we spoke the day after they play Portugal, after they play Colombia. What I love most out of DR Congo is that it's the same thing in somehow, some way similar to also like Cape Verde. They don't panic. They're very organized and they're not scared. They obviously play a low block when they face team like Portugal against Colombia. They play a low block. They're not scared to play out of the back. They try to play. They try to break lines. They use their speed. Obviously, they're good at counterattack, offensive transition. They're very physical, obviously. But that's the thing that has shined the most out of, especially about this Congo team. They want to play soccer.
Yep.
And I think they're going to, at some point, depending on how the match goes, I don't expect, obviously, I expect obviously to England to be the aggressor, at least at the beginning. But I wouldn't be shocked if Congo at one moment, even if the game's 0-0, the game is tied, to bring the game to England.
I agree. And by the way, keep an eye on Nathaniel Mbuku, who had a goal disallowed in this game ridiculously. So once again, VAR or a refereeing decision has blemished the game. We talked about that a couple of days ago. There's a lot of experience on this team. You know, you got Brentford was a team I was thinking about before.
And you're playing with no pressure now.
You're playing with no pressure. But you got guys on this team who are used to facing the players that they're going to face in England. Wan-Bissaka, the right back or right wing back, depending on whether they go with a back five or a back four. Tuanzebe as well. And then you got Mbemba, who has played for big clubs in Europe as well. There's experience, there is skill, and to your point, there won't be any intimidation playing against the English. Not only because I think this team is very confident in its abilities and in the game plan that has been presented by their coach, Desabre, but also because they will have seen England's performance and, like you, been underwhelmed by what they've presented against their opponents.
I want to go back for a second to Portugal, Colombia, because we were talking about this before the show started. The disallowed Colombia goal.
Oh, yes. We forgot about that, conveniently. Look, the rule is the rule. I sat here. Hold on a second. Yes, and
I wanted to take multiple objects at home and throw it against the TV. Imagine that's my TV. I'm throwing the paper to a camera. I was fuming.
Okay, but Michele.
I understand.
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah.
But there's something, and Stu Holden said this, and I'm glad he said this. Camera angles can be deceiving.
Yes.
But the eye test, taking into account that camera angles can be deceiving, and what they showed on the VR graphic, I didn't see the same thing.
This is an argument, or this is a debate.
I know you have a hot take to
no, it's not necessarily a hot take. Look, I sat here with Goss and Doyle yesterday, and we talked about the goal that was disallowed for Iran. Mm-hmm. Millimetric as well. A lot of people didn't know the rule.
Yeah, behind the goalkeeper,
penultimate player, whether or not it's the goalkeeper. But when it comes to the offside rule and the use of semi-automated offsides, it's black and white. Now, you can rail against the fact that it's a toenail of a difference. But if we believe that semi-automated offside is correct to the pixel, then it's offside. Would I be apoplectic, angry, be everything if I were Colombian? Absolutely. But what are you going to do? Are you going to change the rule? Are you going to make it about daylight? You know, the Wenger rule that he wants to implement? You're going to have the same issue because it's always going to go down to the pixel when it comes to these decisions. You can make the argument, not you necessarily, but it's been made, it goes against the spirit of the game. Yeah, I can see that. But how do you correct that? How do you deal with that issue? I don't think there's an answer. So until somebody comes up with an innovative way of dealing with this is the kind of decision that will plague this game forever.
So somebody on our Discord asked a question about VAR, not necessarily on this Colombia disallowed goal and the automatic offside. So he asked, does VAR need more specifically defined rules of engagement? Because it seems that clear and obvious is not a good litmus test. And a good bit of the calls go into re-officiating of the game.
But it is, okay, so in some ways, VAR is the re-officiating of a game. But it's the re-officiating of what is supposed to be clear.
Sorry to interrupt. It's part of what I was saying 2 days ago.
That referees are afraid to make decisions.
Yes, and referees are afraid at some point to make obvious calls on the field because in the back of their mind, they say, well, I have VAR as a backup. But sometimes VAR hasn't intervened and the clear and obvious missed call has 10.
Look, yes. I mean, again, I just don't understand. Unless you get rid of VAR, which is never going to happen, and I'm not a proponent of. I've wanted something like VAR for a long time.
Yes.
After the 2010 World Cup, when Frank Lampard's goal was disallowed against Germany. Not that I'm an England fan.
Or USMNT against Germany.
Against Germany
2002.
in 2002. I just thought it needs to change. The game is too big. There's too much at stake for there not to be this. So I think, going back to the question, the only way that you're going to deal with VAR and correct all these things or fine-tune them is to just remove VAR. You have it or you don't have it. Do I think, or maybe you add a time limit to the decisions being made. But I think the decision making has been very quick in this World Cup. When people go to the monitor, I think the decisions were made quickly. The time that it takes to go to the monitor, that's another conversation. I will add this. In Major League Soccer, the clear and obvious rule when it comes to offside is a visual one. It's not measured to the millimeter by semi-automated offside.
Correct.
So could you do that in a World Cup? Yes. And then that goal would have counted. Would people be okay with that? I'm not so sure.
Group L. Gotta move on. And again, Croatia wins against Ghana. Now Croatia faces Portugal in the next round in Toronto. We'll see England with 7 points, Croatia with 6, Ghana 4, and Panama, sadly, for their second World Cup in history, they go 0-3.
Undeservedly, I would argue.
Completely agree. You could make the case that they were the better team against Croatia. I don't know if they were the better team against England yesterday, but what I can tell you is that England was, again, very underwhelming.
Underwhelming in the attacking third, dominated proceedings.
Absolutely.
But didn't translate that dominance into goals in the first half. And Panama was full of fight. But once Bellingham scores that goal, which I thought was a soft goal from Panama's perspective, to not body him up a little bit more, to allow him to poke that ball in, will have been very, very deflating for Panama, considering how they played. Look, like Martinez with Portugal and maybe some other coaches in this tournament, I look at Tuchel's decisions and they're eyebrow raising. For example, why are you playing Kwanzaa as the right back when you have Spence on the bench, who's a right back, and when you've used Spence, you've used him on the left side, and England were lacking width, and you have a Harry Kane who can benefit from having width. I mean, look at the header that he scores in this game from across. So nothing about England has been impressive, but I will say this about them. They might have some trouble scoring and creating real good opportunities, but it's going to be tough for teams to beat them too. And that's a big part of the tournament, is how well you defend.
And that's part of the Thomas Tuchel history with teams.
100%.
He's Chelsea with Christian Pulisic that wins
Is PSG as well.
The Champions League.
Yep.
And something similar to watching with Mexico. Very pragmatic. They're going to win probably 1-0, 2-0, 2-1. It's not going to be football champagne, but it's going to be very, very tough for opponents to score on them. Harry Kane, you mentioned the goal. He becomes England all-time FIFA World Cup scorer with 11. He moved past Gary Lineker. And Jude Bellingham becomes the youngest English player on record since 1966 to both score and assist in a World Cup match, and the fourth overall in the history of England. Jude Bellingham, 22 years, 363 days of age. Like we mentioned, England now faces DR Congo on the round of 32. And talking about the knockout round and the round of 32, let's see how the bracket came out now that the group stage it's completely done, and from 48 teams now we have the final 32. Brazil, Japan, Ivory Coast against Norway, Mexico, Ecuador. I'm scared from my L3. Dear Eric now. Against Ecuador, England, DR Congo, Argentina, Cape Verde, Australia, Egypt, Switzerland, Algeria, and Colombia against Ghana on the right side. On the left, Germany, then France, Sweden, South Africa, Canada. That's today, and we're going to talk a little bit of that game later on. Netherlands, Morocco, probably the best game on paper of the round of 32, alongside Portugal, Croatia, Spain, Austria, the USMNT next Wednesday against Bosnia, and Belgium against Senegal. And now that we have the bracket, some people say that the World Cup is starting today.
Yeah, you know what
the real World Cup.
The real World Cup. But you know what came to mind when I saw that bracket? That's a lot of teams.
That's a lot of teams.
It's still a lot of teams. And there is an easy path, which we talked about for Argentina. Some great matchups. You mentioned Netherlands, Morocco. I do think that's one of the highlight matches.
Yep.
Mexico, Ecuador is one that I'm also really looking forward to because there's no benefit in the altitude for Mexico. Ecuador in Quito, used to it, maybe better equipped to some degree because Mexico so often play their international matches outside of their own country. Japan, Brazil is an interesting one because of the influence between the two countries. You've got a lot of Japanese who went to Brazil. You've got a lot of Brazilians, especially when you talk about the J League in the 90s, a lot of Brazilians who went there. So there's a lot of subplots for that match too. There's so much to feast on, but there is so much still left to be played.
We're talking about, like you mentioned at the top of the show, 9 of the 10th African teams advance. The big losers, if we're talking about regions in this World Cup, is Asia. Just 2 teams out of Asia advance. All 3 host countries advance, obviously Canada, the US, and Mexico. 13 out of the 16 UEFA teams advance to a round of 32, and 5 out of the 6 CONMEBOL team advance. And now we're going to play with you a little buy or sell. I'm going to give you 2 statements, and you're going to tell me if you buy it or sell it, and give me a short explanation. What do you make that decision? Statement number 1. Francia is the prohibited favorite in the tournament. Basically, it's France against the field.
I've changed my mind on this one. I'm going to sell it.
Hey, you didn't say that before the show.
I didn't. I changed my mind.
You threw me a big curveball.
I did.
What are we doing?
I'm sorry. I bought it at the beginning, but I've been thinking about this. I think that the teams you face and the wear and tear you go through in the tournament will play a big part in how teams perform later on in the tournament. Mm-hmm. And again, I not only look at the way Argentina have played, the appetite with which they have played, with a Leo Messi who shows no signs of slowing down, and that's because he's walked for most of his career, but still delivers on the big stage, continues to score. And you look at the path that they have. I think it's going to be a cakewalk until they face Colombia. And what that is going to allow Scaloni to do is to rest, I think, some of his players, not necessarily in rotating teams at the beginning of the game, but managing his players during the game. Okay, we're in the lead against Cape Verde. We've scored 2 or 3 goals. Let's take this guy off. Let's do this. And from what we saw against Jordan, you bring in the Lo Celso, and he's going to be able to deliver. So are they prohibitive favorites? Only if you can include another prohibitive favorite, which would be Argentina. So I guess I'm going to have to sell.
Would you agree that France, Argentina, and Spain are a whole notch above everyone else?
I would say that right now it's Argentina and France above Spain.
So tier 1, France, Argentina. Tier 1B,
1B.
Argentina.
I'm glad you said that. 1B is Spain. Yeah.
And then tier 2, 3 down.
I would say after that, there's not even a tier 2. Let's go straight to tier 3.
Okay. Now, statement number 2, the last one. Having watched the bracket and seen the path of all 3 hosts, USA, Mexico, and Canada. To give you a refresher, Mexico now faces Ecuador, and in the round of 16, they will potentially face England, if obviously England beats Congo. Canada has South Africa today on the round of 32, and on the round of 16, they will face the winner of the Netherlands and Morocco. Really tough matchup there. And the USA, the USMNT, plays Bosnia, and then the winner between Belgium and Senegal. Having seen that, my statement is the USA. It's the only host country that will make quarterfinals.
I'm going to buy it. I would have said a few days ago, maybe even a week ago, that Mexico would be the team that would go the furthest out of the hosts because of the advantage of playing at home. But as we already mentioned, they're playing Ecuador next. And then after that, they'll probably play England. Now, they'll have the advantage, let's say they get through Ecuador, they'll have the advantage of altitude against England. I'm not so sure they're going to get past Ecuador, even though Ecuador have, to some degree, flattered to deceive in this tournament and really only showed up and reached that potential against Germany, whereas the U.S. have home field advantage and they're playing teams that haven't been particularly impressive. Bosnia are not going to roll over for the U.S., but they're going to play in transition, and I don't think they have as many arguments to cause the United States a lot of problems. And then after that, Belgium or Senegal, both those teams up the ante. Senegal prone to a lot of mistakes, and we've only seen some real synchronicity from the Belgians against New Zealand. So you have to keep that in mind. It's like Portugal versus Uzbekistan. As for Canada, what's so frustrating for them is because they didn't get a result against Switzerland, they're no longer playing at home, and that is certainly a factor. And by the way, I don't agree with that happening. If you're a host, you should continue to host. It's not fair that Mexico continues to host and the United States and Canada do not.
And having, for example, a game now being played in Toronto. They could have easily arranged that for Canada,
exactly,
even if they were second in the group. You know where I got the shirt, this jersey?
At a store.
At soccer.com. That beautiful Mexico jersey at soccer.com, because that leads us to our soccer.com segment. We're taking a look at the Golden Boot standings as we head into the round of 32. From the biggest stage in the world to your next training session, the Trionda Pro is the official match ball of the FIFA World Cup 26. It's the same ball used across all 16 host cities this summer, and now it's available at soccer.com. Whether you're a player, coach, or collector, this is the highest performance match ball Adidas and FIFA make. We're seeing the Golden Boot standings. Leo Messi scored yesterday, 6 goals, and then Kylian Mbappe, Ousmane Dembele with a hat trick, with 4, Vinicius Jr. and Erling Haaland and other players tied with 4 goals. With that, I ask you, dear Eric, your predictions. Who is going to win the Golden Boot at this 2026 World Cup?
Leo Messi.
You took the easy one.
Well, it's easy. Again, it goes down to the path. The other teams have to face stiffer and stronger opponents. I'm not sure Norway gets through the Ivory Coast. Ivory Coast, arguably the most impressive African side in this tournament. What do you think?
Yeah.
Norway did quite well with their second team against France, but France were playing in first gear throughout. Dembele scores a heck of a first half hat trick. All those names that we saw on that list were the names that most people would have expected pre-tournament. Mbappe has a shot, but I think Messi, with the path that Argentina have, is going to be the Golden Boot.
I'm still leaning Kylian Mbappe. I think France is going to win this World Cup. I think France is going to be in the final. Hence, they're going to play more games, although everything points out that France and Argentina are going to meet
in the final.
Point, so we'll see. You know it. Soccer.com if you want to get... I mean, Italia is not here, but I'm still representing with this beautiful... This is one of the training jerseys or the warm-up jerseys with the Adidas.
Nice and simple and clean,
that
just the way I like it.
Beautiful Mexico jersey with the FIFA World Cup patch on the sleeve.
Mm-hmm. There it is.
Magazines, scarves, balls, everything that you need only on soccer.com. And now, while we're talking throughout the show and building to this moment, the round of 32 starts today at 3 p.m. Eastern Time in LA, Canada, against South Africa. Obviously, Canada loses that last game against Switzerland. They lose the right to stay in Canada. We already mentioned how unfair this is, and I think everyone will agree with that. But some will say, then win your group, right? And you had the opportunity to do that. LA is not far from Vancouver, but still, I understand most Canadians fans were hoping to stay in Canada. Most of them already got tickets for that game in Vancouver in the round of 32. But on the other side of the coin, you might say that now Canada got luckier with the rival. South Africa, probably the weakest nation. What have we seen so far that advanced to a round of 32? What do you make of this?
I would
game?
agree with that statement. I don't know what to make of South Africa, to be completely honest with you. I think they play best when they don't have the ball and play in transition, and that's what we've seen them do for the most part. They had more possession against Czechia than Czechia did, and that was the only one out of the 3 games where they've had the lion's share of possession. Makoena comes back for this game because he was suspended. He was a key missing piece, and yet they managed to get the result that they needed without him in order to make it to the knockout stages. I think the advantage is clearly on Canada's side, but what is intriguing about this matchup for me is the approach, because you have a South African side that plays better without the ball and in transition, and you've got a Canadian national team that likes to counter press and therefore perhaps plays its best football without the ball as well. So something's got to give. Who's going to have more possession? I would think that Canada will ultimately have more of the ball in this game, and how that impacts them, how that allows them to cut through the South Africans is what I'm the most curious about. Because I'm not sure Canada is at its best when they have a lot of the ball and they're trying to find ways through a deep block. I think they're, in typical Jesse Marsh fashion, they're at their best when they can pick your pocket in the attacking third and strike quickly.
Again, that game at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, noon local time in LA. Have you been to SoFi Stadium?
I have not yet.
Unbelievable.
I've flown over it.
When you land in LAX, you see it. It's unbelievable. I will put it alongside Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta as the best stadiums I've ever been in my life. Just breathtaking. And again,
and enormous.
Having SoFi, having Atlanta, having Miami that looked incredible yesterday in Colombia, Portugal. We get that dump of a stadium, MetLife hosting the final. Sorry, New Jersey.
You're bringing up SoFi, and it's interesting because I was looking through the bracket, and I don't remember all the games right now, but I was looking specifically at what teams now in the knockout stages are playing where, and whether they're playing in open stadiums like a Hard Rock or a Miami stadium, or whether they're playing in a roofed stadium, and how much of a difference that will make going forward in this tournament.
We saw last night how humid and how especially the Portuguese players were sweating.
They were impacted by that. They couldn't. They were fighting not only a very good team, but the elements. Whereas the Colombians are very used to that kind of climate. You know, they're playing in Barranquilla. They play so many of those of their games in Barranquilla, which is basically the tropics.
And the heat is gonna play a factor on the final because an open stadium in MetLife in New York, New Jersey. Miami's gonna host the third place match, and the semifinals are gonna be in both Dallas or Arlington, the Cowboys Stadium, and Atlanta, which both are domes and control environments. So whether at least semifinals and the finals is gonna be definitely a factor in the final game at MetLife. Do you care to give me a prediction for Canada, South Africa?
I think I'm going to go with 3-1 Canada in this game. And that one is being played in Houston, right? The Canada-South Africa. Am I right in saying that?
The game today?
No, Canada is going to be played in Los Angeles,
Yes.
in LA. So LA, you've got the roof. another advantage.
It's not a roof. It's like a canopy, but
Like a canopy.
It's mostly
Controlled, right?
Yeah.
So you're talking about, the advantage there for Canada, or that will help Canada. You would think that the South Africans would have wanted to play in a different venue so they could use the climate to their advantage. Canada 3-1 for me. What about you?
Where do you see that if there's a chance for South Africa in this game? I agree with you. I think Canada wins 2-0. I think they will be defensively astute against a South Africa team that hasn't shown much. I think we're going to see a similar game that we saw from South Africa against Mexico on the opening game. They're going to sit low block. They're not going to offer much in the offense. Of course, they're going to try to use any Canada mistake and use it as a counterattack possibility of being fast of offensive transition. But I think Canada, it's well constructed on midfield and in the back line. Stephen Eustachio is probably coming back to the starting lineup alongside Ismael Saliba on midfield.
Who's an unbelievable player, Saliba.
Yeah.
Unbelievable player.
Yeah. Alongside, sadly, Saliba came into a starting lineup because of the Ismael
Kone
injury. But at the end with Canada, I believe they're going to have their chances like they did, for example, on the first game against Bosnia. But you got to take advantage of those chances. We've seen both sides of this Canadian team. If they strike first and they take advantage of those chances, because they're going to have a lot of chances against South Africa. So you're hoping that Jonathan David and Kyle Larin wake up on the right foot or on their left foot, whichever is the case, and they get those chances, because this Canada team has shown, especially against that Bosnia opening game. And I understand that the opening game, there's a lot of anxiousness, a lot of nerves. But we've seen also against Switzerland that when the pressure and the heat gets a little bit high for this Canada team, they tend to be mistake prone on the final third. Yeah.
You mentioned South Africa against Mexico. One of the big factors in that game, and you just mentioned the word was the I said nerves. What did you say? You said anxiousness, right? The anxiety.
Yeah,
you could see that the South Africans were overwhelmed by the moment in that game against Mexico. I'm not sure the same happens here against Canada. I think they're happy to be there. I don't mean to be dismissive of South Africa in saying that they're happy to be in the knockout stages, but considering the expectations that they'd be knocked out at the group stage, they'll go in as underdogs, hoping to pull off an upset, and they'll understand that the pressure will all be on Canada, even if Canada are not playing in Vancouver and are playing in Los Angeles. So how that translates into the game to be determined. But yeah, I just don't see Canada losing this game. Having said that, I think I've gotten every single one of my predictions wrong so far in this World Cup.
That's a good disclaimer.
Yeah, it is a good disclaimer.
Well, that's the show.
That's the show.
A few final notes. Tomorrow you'll be back.
Yes.
With David Gass and Matt Doyle to talk about this Canada game. We hope that Canada tomorrow it's set on the round of 16. And you guys are going to preview tomorrow's matches. 3 games, Brazil, Japan, Paraguay, Germany, or Germany, Paraguay. And on paper, the most attractive round of 32 matches between Netherlands and Morocco. And also, the USMNT game is not until Wednesday. But if you go to a SoccerWise feed, Dave and Matt already did a preview for that game. I listened it yesterday, 42 minutes, quick. It's a great preview for the USMNT against Bosnia on Wednesday. If you want to listen to that, you can go to whatever you hear your podcast and download that episode. Any else that you want to
Here's my question for you. Since you're not going to be here, you look at those matchups, Brazil, Japan, Germany, Paraguay, and Netherlands, Morocco. What are your predictions for those games?
I really like what I've seen from Brazil in the last 2 games, especially on the last one. Even without Rafinha, I think that the team looked better. And we've talked about this, how Carlo Ancelotti with Real Madrid or whoever club he has managed. I think he knows how to deal with knockouts stages.
Yep.
But at the end with Brazil, I think it depends upon Vinicius, right? If Vinicius is on and they can play through him, play for him, I think Brazil has a really good chance. I obviously like Germany against Paraguay. And I'm a big believer in Morocco. I think this team can have another semifinal run in them like they did in Qatar 2022. So I will pick Brazil, Germany, and Morocco. I know I'm going with the favorites, but...
Are Morocco the favorites against the Netherlands? Yeah. I don't know. Based on what we saw from the Netherlands
I agree.
in the last few games.
But I think Morocco has played with like their, the how to say, the handbrake on. And especially what we've seen... I think we saw the first half against Brazil in the first game, the potential that this Morocco has. I think we're going to see that moving forward.
I can't wait. I can't wait for these knockouts to start. I'm going to enjoy them. Just one game today. It feels anticlimactic in the way that there's only one game to enjoy today. But it's an interesting one for sure.
So Eric, alongside Matt and David, are going to be back tomorrow at 9:30 Eastern Time to talk again about what happened in Canada, South Africa, and to preview tomorrow's matches. And for me, I want to, if you guys allow me for a few seconds, to talk about Venezuela and what's happening. I'm half Venezuelan. I have family in Venezuela. Venezuela was hit by 2 back-to-back massive earthquakes a few days ago. And if you're inclined and if you have some cents or dollars to spend, there's a lot of charity foundations, or if you, it's a little bit hard for me to talk about it, but if you are inclined to maybe collect some stuff, medicines, basic food needs, basic medicines, and go to your local shelters, or go online and find where every city in the U.S. and a lot of organizations are gathering things to send help to Venezuela. The situation is beyond bleak. There's over 1,000 people that have died already. There's over 50,000 people that are missing under the rubbles. La Guaira, which is the coast town north of the country, they're just north of Caracas, the capital. That's where the main airport is. It's completely destroyed. Again, there's over 50,000 people missed. There's a lot of help that it's needed. So if you want to go online, and I'm sure you're going to easily find places that you can donate money, or if you want to send stuff, medicine, food, etc. I know if you're in Florida, in Miami is a very Venezuelan populated area. There's a lot of places that they're gathering food, medicine to send to Venezuela because a lot of help is needed. Thank you for that. And that's the show. See you guys tomorrow. Sorry to end on that bleak note.
I'm sorry that, that you're going through this and that the Venezuelan people are going through this. They've been through enough.
Yeah. And my message to Venezuelans like myself, I know how hard it is to be here and not helping there. It's very frustrating. You feel completely helpless and useless. But again, you can help with donations, with helping sending food, medicine, and it's greatly, greatly appreciated. Have a great day. If you're in New York, come out to the city. It's the Pride Parade today. It's going to be a great party in New York City. Starts at noon. So have a great Sunday. Enjoy Canada, South Africa. Eric, thank you so much. Thank you to all our wonderful production people. And Dave and Matt alongside you.
See you tomorrow.
Tomorrow, 9:30. Have a great day. Bye.